There's this guy on Twitter named Michael Ripp, Michael.
Yeah.
Rippe.
Oh, the Ripper?
Hey, is that what they call him?
Yes. Riper? That's what I believe.
He's some chief
Ripper.
something officer for some Bitcoin poker thing, but super analytics guy.
Okay.
He put out some good stats that we need to chit-chat about. There's this guy on Twitter named Michael Ripp, Michael.
Yeah.
Rippe.
Oh, the Ripper?
Hey, is that what they call him?
Yes. Riper? That's what I believe.
He's some chief something officer for some Bitcoin poker thing, but super analytics guy.
Okay.
He put out some good stats. There's this guy on Twitter named Michael. There's this guy on Twitter named Michael Ripp. There's this guy on Twitter named Michael Ripp. There's this guy on Twitter named Michael Ripp.
Good morning. It is TMA football, and there is this guy on Twitter named Michael Ripp. And I am right here, right now, live today. It is week 4, the morning after football. It was a crazy Sunday, as they always are. We've got a lot to talk about today. I am live from New York City, outside of the studios on the West Coast, so doing this the best I can, lighting a little off. All good. We're talking football. Doesn't matter the way we look. While you're here, make sure you subscribe to Michael Rippey. That's me. On social media, on X, YouTube. We've got the YouTube channel running now. You can watch the program there. You can watch it on X. And now, for the second week running, we're on Instagram Live. Probably you're on Instagram saying, what is going on? That's right. We're talking football every Monday morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, 7:30 Pacific, giving you 90 minutes of all that you need to know from the week that was, from week 4 this week. So TMA football is live. And if you subscribe and tune in on X all throughout the week, you will get all the details, the stats, the winning details that help you not only in real football, whether it's gambling, your teams, or in fantasy. And that's what we do. We merge the real football with the fantasy. We got amazing guests today. In 15 minutes, I'm joined by Terrell Butch, who has joined me every week of the NFL season so far to break down what we saw on the field, some of the hot players, some of the guys slacking, some of the injuries. There's been a lot to get to. We're going to get to that with my guy TB in short order here this morning. And then later in 45 minutes, my guy Pigskin Pick'em, Dave Hartman will join the program. Excited to have the Pigskin Papers team on. Dave always puts a lot of good information that helps you break down who you need on waivers, what we saw from the week that was. Excited to have him break it down with us today. And then finally in 75 minutes, my good friend Tip Major will join to run through some more fantasy. So we'll go real, we'll get fantasy in there, and it will be a great time. But first, let's start on what I'm thinking around the league and get to the box score breakdown. All right. So I'm checking this out for the first time. We're going to add the box score breakdown. Now, I put the box score breakdown out for everyone to see early mornings on X, and the 9 major keys from week 4 give you a kind of an overview of what we saw this weekend. So let's quickly run through Jayden Daniels. He completed 86.7% of his passes in week 4. That's incredible. His 82.1% completion percentage through the first 4 games is an absolute record for the NFL. You see a stat line from yesterday. Washington wins. They lead the NFC East 3-1, 26 of 30, 1 touchdown. Just awesome. Let's continue. Dontavian Wicks for the Packers. I talked about him in the preseason. I said he was my favorite player fantasy-wise to get. He was essentially free. Career breakout game, 13 targets, 2 touchdowns. People are saying all over he could have had 4 touchdowns. He drops 1. He had 2 touchdowns. He got 13 targets. Christian Watson is injured. Dontavian Wicks looks really good. Pretty excited about that call from early September. It is September 30th. We're wrapping up September this Monday. Joe Flacco, he's back. And what does Joe Flacco do when he's in? He throws touchdowns. He leads the Colts. Anthony Richardson is hurt. 2 touchdowns in 6 straight games for Joe Flacco. The Colts are victorious in week 4. Patriots running back Ramondre Stevenson. The wrong kind of streaking. He's now fumbled in every game this season. That's 4 fumbles in 4 games. You can't do that if you want to stay on the field, contributing to why the Patriots are not in the W column this morning. The Broncos, here's some funny math when you look at the receivers. They had 12 receptions. 10 different players were targeted. 7 players caught passes. It counted for 60 total yards. And yet Cortland Sutton had 3 catches for 60 yards alone. How do you get there? Well, 9 other targeted players combined for 9 catches and 0 yards. Pretty wild when you think about it. Look at this stat. 3 catches, 60 yards, and then the whole team has 12 catches, 60 yards. Cortland Sutton saving the Broncos, who did win in week 4. The Bucs, it's pretty equal. People talking about the running backs, Rachaad White, Bucky Irving, each identical days, 10 carries, 49 yards. Bucky Irving gets in the end zone. But talk about a timeshare. That looks like a timeshare to me. The Bucs did win. They're rolling. We go to the Vikings, stay in the NFC. Sam Darnold slinging it again. 3 touchdowns in the first half. The Vikings up 28-0 over the Packers before the Packers start their comeback. Vikings are 4-0. Sam Darnold in that early MVP conversation. Another big day. And then kickers, because kickers need love too. I've been talking about how much the kickers matter, and kicking wins and loses. And Younghoe Koo wins the game for the Falcons, a 58-yarder. He goes 4 for 4 on the day from field goals. He was one of the reasons the Atlanta Falcons won. Conversely, those New York Jets losing kickers. Greg Zuerlein misses the game-winning kick from 50 yards, and the Jets lose. Shows you how important kickers were. We could dive deeper into kickers, but that is the box score breakdown. While you slept, I checked the box score. I broke it down. Now you can win with these details. If you want more, check me out on X. That is the box score breakdown for week 4 of the NFL season. All right, let's get back to the program. And here we are as we prep to talk to my guy who's been here in week 1, in week 2, in week 3. If you have questions, there's the comment section. Make sure to ask some questions, whether they're real fantasy. We'll bring them in during the show. And of course, appreciate everyone. You're at the gym. Appreciate you tuning in. You want to be fired up, Green Rock? You're fired up. All right. Get that pump in, as he says. Let's go. We're doing it. That's right. It's week 4 NFL. And the only way to do a better program for week 4 is to bring in people that have been watching the games, that have been talking about the games, about, fantasy real. And as I said, we start this morning with my guy. He's back for another week. My guy, good morning to my guy. Terrell Bush is here again, and look at him. He's got the NFL sweatshirt. What's up? What's up, TB?
Going on, man? How you doing, Rip? I heard you're in New York. How you liking it so far, man? I know the weather isn't the best, but how you liking it out here, man?
I love it, man. It's good to be on the East Coast for a change. It changes up. We go real early on the West Coast, but now we're on the East Coast, so it's a little bit later in the morning, but it's all good. I got a nice breakfast in. I was able to have some time to look through some stuff earlier than without going to the program. But we're here now. I want to hear all of this stuff because we got a lot to get into, man. What'd you think of week 4?
Man, it was exciting. We saw, I know Mel Kiper was one to, want to diminish and take away the cover two deep safety so we can have a little bit more offensive game. But this week, we got a little bit more offense. We see teams are starting to roll, things are going well for certain teams. So we'll see, but I enjoyed the week, man. I'm ready to get into it. We still got 2 games today. I know your Dolphins play tonight. So let's get right into it, man. We got a lot to speak about.
Yeah, please. So let's go to the NFC, and I want to talk quarterbacks, and then you bring it in anywhere. Obviously, when you think about the NFC, we've got one undefeated team out there with the Minnesota Vikings, 4-0. They beat the Green Bay Packers this week. Sam Darnold gets out 3 touchdowns in that first half, dominating Green Bay with a massive comeback. Let's start in the NFC North, specifically with Minnesota, because they've now beaten San Francisco, Houston, and Green Bay in 3 consecutive weeks. It's hard to top that. And Sam Darnold looks like an early MVP candidate. What's your take on not only Sam Darnold's performance, the Vikings as we move forward, and then let's touch on Green Bay?
Definitely. So, I mean, for Minnesota, right, and teams that start off hot, you want to see how they win football games. How exactly are they winning? Are they winning the same way? Are they winning in different ways? The teams that aren't pretenders per se are teams that can win in multiple ways. And we've seen that with the Minnesota Vikings. Last night, having to hold on after a hot start and come out, opening the game 28-7. And then as the Packers started to rally, they had to lean on that defense a little bit in the second half when Sam Darnold and that offense was a little bit stalled. They were able to still pull out that game. And that's a good thing to see. Last week, we see the San Francisco 49ers, even though they didn't, or last week when we saw them with the Houston Texans, we saw how they were able to stymie CJ Stroud and how they were able to slow down that offense. Now, there are some things going on with Houston that we may get into a little bit later, but it was still a great showing. Now, we saw how they beat San Fran and we saw how they beat the Giants. So this is not a team that is just winning the same way week in and week out. We're seeing Sam Darnold, of course, is off to a hot start, but that defense is also playing ball, which we have to pay attention to. They have their best start 4-0 since 2016. And the best start, this is a good stat that I saw via ESPN yesterday. This is the best start for a quarterback that's on his 4th+ team in the last 50 years. Listen to this. So you got Brett Favre, who went 6-0 with Minnesota. We got Sam Darnold, of course, in the mix, who's 4-0 with Minnesota. We got Rich Gannon, who started off 3-0 with the Oakland Raiders. We got Vinny Testaverde, who started 4-0 with the New York Jets, and Steve Bond, who started off 4-0 for the Kansas City Chiefs. So it just goes to show you that Sam Darnold's on an elite list coming here, and he's the 5th quarterback to start 4-0 with 10 passing touchdowns in his first 4 starts since 1950 via CBS Sports. So just goes to show you that offense is flowing and that team is rolling right now, man.
That's incredible. The names that you dropped there, some legends, some guys that you look back on and you think, yeah, those are that's elite categories. I don't think anybody had Sam Darnold, not only the Vikings 4-0, but Sam Darnold playing this well. He leads the league in touchdown passes with 11. And that Vikings team, as we said, they're beating good teams. They're not just walking over, cakewalks on bad teams. They're beating the good teams. Let's go to Green Bay, though, because and before we leave on Minnesota, let's not forget, they're going to get their all-pro tight end, TJ Hawkinson, back in, the upcoming weeks. We saw Jordan Addison get into the party. We saw Jalen Nailor, looks like a good rookie. They've got a lot of weapons. Kevin O'Connell's got them humming. And this looks like it's not only for real, but they're a real threat throughout the season to lead the NFC. Potentially we could be talking about a 1 seed out of Minnesota, which sounds crazy. But a team we thought coming in could be the surprise in the NFC North. Maybe not a huge surprise, but still a surprise, was the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love did return, and he got it going, in the second half. I don't know how much of that was comeback, how much of that was real. Talk to me about Green Bay and what you saw.
Well, for Green Bay, for Jordan Love in and of itself, I think coming off of the injury that he came off of, he's recovering at a faster pace than they originally expected. The question for me was, when you're coming in against a team with Minnesota, right, you're at home, do you bring Jordan Love back this week or do you save him for next week? They had Malik Willis and he went 2-0 these last couple of weeks. Do you throw Jordan Love into that fire to just get him right back into it? Or do you save this week and bring in Malik Willis? That was a question that I thought, would be brought up a little bit. But I mean, Jordan Love, when his back was against the wall, that, he started throwing that football and, we could see it. He's electric with his arm. His off-platform throws are some of the things that, you know, I know he was watching Aaron Rodgers for the years that he wasn't starting, because you could see he loves the off-platform throws. It does help him at times, but it hurts him also, because we've seen him turn over the football early. But I mean, all of that is rhythm too, Rip. You know, the season's just started. He only played the first game against the Philadelphia Eagles down in Brazil. So, you know, all of that is repetition. All of that is getting your legs up under you. But I mean, hey, when things had to hit the wall and his back was against it, I mean, he did go 32 for 54, 389 yards, 4 touchdowns. Like you said, I mean, they did get back into the ball game. It was late. It was a rally, but at the same time, they did come back. So let's just give it time. Let's let Jordan Love get his legs up under him. But hey, those weapons out there are serious in Green Bay, and they're still a threat. Don't let that fool you.
It's not even a question. Of course, they are a threat because they have all the weapons. They've got a great coach in LaFleur. And as you said, Jordan Love got it going in the second half. I think we had big expectations for Green Bay coming into the season. And, you know, they're 2-2. Look, the Vikings go to week 5. They go to London. They'll play the Jets. That's a big game in week 5 already. That could be the spot where maybe Vikings finally lose a game. We'll see how they perform. We've seen them perform here on American soil. But how will they perform across the pond? We'll see with the Vikings. And as you say, Green Bay, they're going to be okay. They have the Rams next week. We'll see what happens in that NFC clash. Let's stick in the NFC to a team that, you know, you love, you know well. And what's going on in Philadelphia? TB, unmute your mic.
Oh, my apologies, everybody. My apologies.
No, you're good.
But basically what I was saying was I didn't have many expectations going into yesterday. I know we had a great game coming off of the New Orleans win in New Orleans. It was a great win. Defensively, we played our asses off, to say the least, man. We played a great football game. But coming into Tampa Bay, we don't win in Tampa. And we've lost our last 7 of 8 games to Tampa Bay since 2015. This is our second straight loss in Tampa Bay to Baker Mayfield, dating back last year in the playoffs when we lost to Tampa Bay. So it's tough right now, man. Like we said last week, you know, there's not a little bit. There is an identity crisis with the team. What are we? We have Saquon Barkley now, a great offensive weapon. Are we a running football team? Are we a passing football team? Are we a play action football team? What exactly are we on the offensive side of the ball? And defensively, we are still susceptible to big plays, and we gave up 445 total yards yesterday, and it looked like in a snap of a finger, it was 1 o'clock, it turned 1:20, and we were already down 21 points. So it just goes to show you our first 3 possessions on offense, we went 3 plays for 2 yards, a minute 55 seconds. Defense has to get back on the field, already down 7-zip. They end up giving up another touchdown. Offense gets back on the field, 3 plays, -7 yards, a minute and 38 seconds. Defense right back on the football field. Our next possession, 3 plays for 0 yards, 22 seconds. Defense gets right back on the football field. So at the same time, there was a punt that was muffed in between that. But at the same time, special teams, defense, offense, what are we right now? We are identity searching, and the bye couldn't have come at a better time for us, Rip. And, you know, Jalen Hurts, 7 turnovers this year. This year is tied for second most in the NFL, and 27 dating back to the start of last year. So it's really tough, man. Right now, I don't know what's going on with the Eagles, but I could tell you one thing from the top bottom, it doesn't look good.
Yeah, it doesn't look great. And I questioned this last week. Saquon bailed them out in week 3. It wasn't possible in week 4. The Eagles, they have the bye week. They got to figure it out. Something to watch is Nick Sirianni. How does he continue in as the head coach there? It's something to monitor all season long. But let's actually talk about the team in the NFC East that has thrown it up into chaos. I think people had expectations. I don't think people had the expectations that Jaden Daniels would be doing this quickly, and the Washington Commanders will be in first place in the NFC East at 3-1 after they throttle the Arizona Cardinals. And I put out the stat in the box score breakdown. Jaden Daniels is completing 82% of his passes through week 4, an NFL record. So, you know, we know he's a rookie, but he's in the MVP conversation immediately because he looks like a 10-year vet that is the best player. I mean, quite honestly, right now, he's resembling, you know, the best of Lamar Jackson, like Patrick Mahomes. Like, he is doing it so beautifully and so easily. Where do you sit on this Jaden Daniels thing? I mean, is this going to continue just the entire season? Is he just coming into the league barnstorming and just awesome?
Right. Jaden Daniels taking the league by storm, man, to say the least. He is taking the league by storm, and more specifically, the NFC East. I didn't expect Jaden Daniels to come into the NFC East, and 4 weeks into the season, he's the number one team. They're sitting atop the NFC East currently at this point at 3-1. Yesterday, when heading into Arizona, right? Cliff Kingsbury is the offensive coordinator. When you have a team that rallies around their coaching staff and rallies in place for their coaches, that's how you know you got something. Being a former player myself, if we're heading into a game against a former a coach that played from a former team or played against a former team, we're going to bat for our coach and we're trying to win this game for our coach. And yesterday, that's what that offense resembled. That's what that team resembled. Dan Quinn had his boys ready, unlike Nick Sirianni and my guys. Dan Quinn had those guys ready. Cliff Kingsbury had that offense humming. Jaden Daniels is playing at an all-time elite level. Like you said, 82.1% completion percentage through 4 games is the best in any 4-game span in NFL history. He's at top of the list with players like Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, and a bunch of other players, all-time greats. And Jaden Daniels taking the lead by storm, man. I'm scared as a Philadelphia Eagles fan. I am scared for the NFC East for the next 10 years, 10 plus years, because they've got their guy, and they resembled it yesterday, man. It was a great showing for that offense. And Terry McLaurin last week after they beat the Bengals, he said that the culture is changing here. The culture is changing in Washington, and that's somebody that's been through the dumps of Washington. He's been through it. He's been through the dirt. And at the same time, they're showing it now that they are here, and they're here to stay.
Yeah. You talk about worrying about the next 10 years. I think we got to worry about Jaden Daniels the rest of this season, and specifically for those NFC East teams. As we said, the Commanders are 3-1. The rest of the division, the Cowboys and the Eagles are 2-2. The Giants at 1-3. The Commanders have to be taken seriously as potentially not only a playoff team, but could they be the team that comes out of the NFC East? Look, we're only a quarter way through the season, so it's not, let's not make any crazy proclamations here. But these are important details, and what we're seeing from Washington is really exciting for Washington. They haven't had a good squad and a reason to be excited for a while, and now they have all the reasons in the world because of Jaden Daniels. All right, we talked some about the NFC, but I do want to move to the AFC, and let's just dive in with the team that is undefeated in the AFC. They're undefeated. They're 4-0. They are the 2-time defending champs, and you say everything's got to be perfect in the world. Then how is the 2-time defending champion undefeated 4-0? But the Chiefs have all sorts of concern, it seems like. Not only did it seem like Rashee Rice, we lost him to a torn ACL. They've already lost Hollywood Brown. They've got all sorts of issues. It didn't, Travis Kelce played well in week 4, but people are talking about a slow start. Mahomes doesn't look the same, yet the Chiefs keep winning. So winning is what it matters and the key. But what's going on with the Chiefs?
I mean, we asked what's going on with the Chiefs, and they're sitting here at 4-0. So, I mean, quarter of the way through the season, they're playing. They're not playing to the level that we expected them to play coming into the season, especially like you alluded to, the playmakers that they've gotten and acquired throughout the offseason. And left and right, we just keep seeing those players fall to injury. Like you said, Rashee Rice yesterday was an unfortunate situation for Patrick Mahomes on a return interception. Patrick Mahomes dived into Rashee Rice's knee, and it looks like he's got a torn ACL. He's going to be out for the season when he was having a promising year. They have Pacheco and Marquise Brown, other notable and key players that they've lost due to injury. So, I mean, right now it's not looking well for them on the offensive side of the ball in terms of keeping those key pieces in. But at the same time, like I said, they're still 4-0. Yesterday, Travis Kelce was able to get it going a little bit, 7 receptions for 89 yards. Kareem Hunt, who they signed just last week, had 14 carries for 69 yards. I mean, 4.9 yards per carry. That's pretty good. He knows the system. He knows Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. So let's see if he could continue that pace and they implement him a little bit more into it. And like we said, Rip, going back to the draft, Xavier Worthy. Hey, you're a rookie, but it's going to be time for him to step up this year, man. He had 3 catches for 73 yards and a touchdown, but I expect his touches to go up, due to the lack of weapons that they have from the outside. So, let's see at the trade deadline. Maybe they bring somebody in, but we know the Chiefs to be the Chiefs, and we know them to stick to their ways. Let's see how they continue to roll. But when you have Patrick Mahomes at the helm, you have Spags on the defensive side of the football, and their defense playing the way that they are. Let's not ignore that. They're clicking still. And they are 4-0 in the top of the AFC West. So let's see if they could continue. Let's see who they pick up at the trade deadline. But no worries from the Chiefs for me, man. except for the injuries, of course.
All right, so no worries from the Chiefs. And look, how much can you worry when you're 4-0? It's true. They just keep winning. Something that I noticed, which was interesting, is I love to look at turnovers and the takeaways and the giveaways. And ironically, usually takeaways, giveaways, these are keys to winning and losing football games. And yet the Chiefs are at the bottom of the league in the bottom three of the difference in turnovers. They're -4 overall, and yet they're 4-0. So you got to say, man, even though they've had these losses and injuries, they're still going. And you know what? They're going to make some moves here to add on to not just having to rely on Xavier Worthy. And so let me just throw this at you. I didn't prep you with this at all. When you think about wide receivers around the league and you go, well, trade deadline, we still got weeks away. Who could Kansas City honestly be looking at potentially to acquire? Should we look at, Davante Adams in the division, going to be tough. Maybe they go to Amari Cooper in Cleveland, Cooper Kupp from the Rams. I mean, I don't know what they can do, but I know they're going to do something or some things, a couple guys. Any guys come to your mind at the wide receiver position that Kansas City could potentially look to acquire to replace some of their injured players?
When you look at this specific topic, Rip, of course, you want to look at some of the teams that are bottom feeders who are looking to get off some veteran players, looking to get off of, some expiring contracts. So maybe that comes off the top of my head. Maybe a team like Tennessee with Calvin Ridley, who they just acquired, or DeAndre Hopkins, who's a grizzled veteran, bringing somebody in that can play that spot and they can play it well. They don't have to teach him. He can come in. He has sure hands, and he's in a situation where with Will Levis and whatever they're doing at the quarterback position, don't really know where they go from there. So that's something that comes to mind. But like you said, Davante Adams, I think that's a little tough, being in division. And, I think he was, linked to the Jets a lot this offseason, with Aaron Rodgers being over there and things of that nature. But at the top of my head, I would say D-Hop. I would say Calvin Ridley. Maybe look to a team like the Jags, who now fall to 0-4. Maybe you look at some of their players over there. They got Brian Thomas, so they're going to build around him. But maybe, I don't know, maybe a player like, Christian Kirk maybe. I know they love Christian Kirk, but at the same time, let's see, moving forward, some of the teams that are towards the bottom of the league, let's see if they try to get off of those expiring contracts or some of those veteran receivers.
Yeah. Some good names you added to the names that I had thought through. We'll definitely monitor as the season goes, but I imagine the Chiefs will pick up not one, but probably two different wide receivers that are not currently on their roster because they're going to need reinforcements just because they've lost the wide receivers. The Hollywood Brown thing never even got going, and he's out for the regular season at least. Now to lose Rashee Rice and the type of play where Mahomes makes a terrible pass, gets an interception, and then takes out his own guy. You hate to see, especially as Rashee Rice is developing into a top-tier wide receiver in the football. So we wish him a speedy recovery. We'll watch what Kansas City does. Let's stay with another top team in the NFL, in the AFC, and actually two top teams. Buffalo gets their first loss on Sunday Night Football as they play Baltimore. Baltimore looks incredible. Derrick Henry goes for 199 yards on the ground. Vintage Derrick Henry. Exactly what people were dreaming of when they thought this combo of Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry. What could they look like? What's their potential? We saw it on Sunday Night Football. Baltimore destroys Buffalo. Buffalo no longer the top team in the AFC. They've got some concerns now. So what'd you take from that Sunday night game between two of the stalwarts in the AFC, Buffalo and Baltimore?
Well, we saw it from opening tap, right? We saw it. The identity of the Baltimore Ravens, they play hard-nosed defense, and they run the football. And that's what they did last night. They've gotten back to their core. They've gotten back to some of the things that we're used to seeing from the Baltimore Ravens. And early in the season, they were losing games, but they were still trying to figure out, how are we going to implement Derrick Henry into the offense? Are we going to play in shotgun? Are we going to, when Justice Hill comes in the game, I alluded to this, when Justin Hill comes in the game, are we going to be more pass friendly? When Derrick Henry comes into the game, are we going to be more run centric? And I feel like they're finding out the dynamic between the two. And at the same time, it just goes to show you yesterday, because they doubled their rushing yards from their passing yards. Derrick Henry, first carry goes 87 yards. He had 24 carries for 199 yards and a touchdown. And my thing that I'm mostly upset about is he didn't get that 1 yard to get 200 yards, because I know they knew that he needed just 1 yard to get his 200 yards. But at the same time, it just goes to show you, man, Derrick Henry is still a top of the game and one of the best running backs in the league, if not the best running back in the league. And defensively, they held, they stopped Buffalo. They were on a 41-game streak of scoring more than 10 points. That was snapped. They held them to 3 for 13 on third down efficiency, and they had 236 total yards. And my thing with Buffalo is when they are down double digits, who is the player that they go to in those situations to help them get back into the ball game? Who is the target? Who is the player that they go to? I mean, Josh Allen is an incredible talent. We already know of his ability at the quarterback position, but who exactly do they go to? What playmaker on the outside? I know Keon Coleman is a dog. I know they have dogs in the backfield, James Cook to allude to him, but at the same time, who is the guy, the breakout player that both Buffalo can go to in times that they need to come back in these ball games? So ultimately, to close out, the Ravens played a great game to getting back to the core of what they do. They had 34 rushing attempts and 19 total passing attempts. So they're getting back to their hard-nosed identity of what they do as the Baltimore Ravens, but questions are a little bit out on the Buffalo Bills. Don't want to panic too much, but we'll see how it goes moving forward.
Yeah, the Derrick Henry thing is great. It's funny. Obviously, you talk about he didn't get to the 200 yards. They asked him in the postgame about that, and he was bummed about it. And that's what you love about Derrick Henry and players like this who have an incredible game, dominate, and yet he's still focused. He said it was going to haunt him, that fumble at the end where he was trying to get that extra yard where he fumbles. He goes for 199 yards. Derrick Henry is leading the league in rushing, 480 yards. He looks like the best running back in football right now after a sterling performance. And yes, Josh Allen for Buffalo can put on the cape, can do only so much against every team. At some time, he'll need some guys he can depend on, whether that's, as you say, some of these, wide receivers, or we need to see more Dalton Kincaid, or maybe Buffalo will figure out that they want to add someone as a playmaker too. This is why I like to start to talk in about some of these potential players that could move around, because I do think we'll see some activity that will fortify some of these teams. Baltimore, 2-2. Buffalo, 3-1. Let's move on to another team who Baltimore is chasing. The team that was undefeated coming into this week. We talked about the quarterbacks. Was it Fields, Russ? Fields Justin's been playing well, 3-0, leading Pittsburgh. I thought he played decently in week 4, but Pittsburgh loses. They lose to the Colts. They don't lose to the Colts with Anthony Richardson, though, because Anthony Richardson gets hurt. And what do you know? It's good old Joe Flacco off the couch again, throwing touchdowns. He's got 2 touchdown passes in 6 straight games now, and all he does is seem to come in and just sling it and get some W's. So what'd you take from the Pittsburgh-Indianapolis game from both sides?
So just piggybacking off of what you said about Joe Flacco, man, I mean, Joe Flacco just knows how to stay ready, and he comes in and he does his job and he does it well. And we saw it last year with the Cleveland Browns leading them to the playoffs. And we just see how he's so effective, a grizzled veteran that's able to come in when Anthony Richardson goes down, and they still are able to pull out the game. So it just goes to show you that backup quarterback position is definitely something that teams need to invest in, because like we were talking about earlier with the Packers, with Malik Willis, that he was able to go 2-0 with his team. Even Justin Fields was a backup, coming into the year. Russell Wilson was supposed to have that job. He came in, starts off 3-0. So it just goes to show you that backup quarterback position is something. But I do want to talk a little bit about Anthony Richardson and the reckless play. He's somebody that coming in, he's a little erratic. He doesn't know how to get down. He wants to take the hits. I mean, he is 6'4", 230, 240. So, I mean, he definitely is a big dude. But at the same time, we've seen those type of players, alluding to maybe like a Cam Newton, who after time you get some of those hits start to pile up. And we're seeing it with Anthony Richardson. He comes back in the game after coming out first with the hit pointer, comes back in, isn't right, has to exit the game. But ultimately, I think that's where Pittsburgh was game planning towards. They were game planning towards Anthony Richardson being in the game. When Joe Flacco comes in the game, he's a better passer. We can already see Anthony Richardson isn't the best passer. We've seen it thus far in his career. He's not the best passer, mid and deep throws. But for Joe Flacco, he's somebody, he comes in the game and you have to make sure that you game plan for all levels of the field. And they were able to come in and do that. And he was effective, 16 for 26, 160 yards, 2 touchdowns. But speaking specifically to Pittsburgh's offense, man, because that was a game they weren't able to get the offense going in the first half. But the second half, Justin Fields, in a sense, put the team on his back. And he was able to go 22 for 34, 300 yards, a touchdown, 10 carries, 55 yards, and 2 TDs. I mean, he did have a fumble where he retreated, trying to do a little bit too much, and ended up fumbling the football. So that was a mistake on his end. George Pickens also fumbled the football when it could have led to points earlier in the game. But ultimately, you would like to see the run game get a little bit going for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I think Justin Fields played a really good game yesterday. I mean, in any other situation, if the Pittsburgh Steelers had Kenny Pickett or any other quarterbacks down the line, it wouldn't have been a game like that. And Justin Fields was able to make plays with his legs, make plays with his arm. And I mean, hey, moving forward, I don't think you make a change. Do you think they make a change at that position, Rip? You think they want to throw Russell in now?
Yeah, I don't think that Russell's getting the job back, at least not yet, right? What we've seen so far from Justin Fields has been more than good enough that, you can win games, but also you can compete in the games, and he deserves every chance to continue in this opportunity. You said it wasn't Justin Fields yesterday that, the Colts beat him. One, that sterling Steelers defense we've heard a lot about gave up too much to Joe Flacco. And two, Justin Fields had those 2 rushing touchdowns. And Justin Fields had complete command of that offense. You talked about the fumbles, George Pickens and the team. And so we're going to see more of Justin Fields. I think he continues in that role, even if Russ is healthy, at least for the foreseeable future. And look, we'll get to see the Steelers next Sunday night on Sunday Night Football in a matchup that was a past Super Bowl and a matchup that used to have more pizzazz, but maybe it's coming back. We'll see Pittsburgh and Dallas. It'll be a nice test to see what's going on with the Steelers, because if Pittsburgh loses again, then we'll start to wonder, well, do we see Russ or what's the issue? But I think Justin Fields has done a really good job in Pittsburgh, and you love to see it. Let's go to where you want to go, because I know I love just giving you a platform to also talk about kind of what you're thinking, what you're surmising. So this is now time with TB. You talk to me and talk to us about what you're seeing around the league.
Hey, Rip. So I'm going to toss a little bit of fantasy talk at you quickly, man, because I was stunned yesterday, and I've just started playing fantasy this year. Wasn't a big fantasy player, but I started this year. And I want to go down to New Orleans and Atlanta, and I want to talk to you a little bit about the Atlanta Falcons and how I played against their defensive special teams. And they ultimately scored around 22 points and basically won the week for the opposing team that I was playing against, because they had a muff punt that was recovered for a touchdown, and then they had an interception that was also returned for a touchdown. So it just goes to show you that defense and special teams is important in the fantasy world. I just had to throw that out quickly. My heart was hurting yesterday, Rip, because I was so upset that you rarely see a muff punt that's returned for a touchdown. But we've seen a lot of it this weekend. I've seen a lot of muff punts in college football. Seen a lot of muff punts in the NFL yesterday too. So just a slight bit of fantasy talk from your boy Bush. But at the same time, I do want to speak on a little bit of things before we wrap up. I want to bring it down to New York. You're in New York, so let's talk a little bit about the New York Jets, man. And that was a game yesterday where weather played a crucial role, right? And going into this game and the way that it was going, these are some of the games that Jets fans are used to losing because of who they had at the quarterback position with Zach Wilson. But when you bring in Aaron Rodgers, you expect him to be able to win that football game. It was a grudge match. It was a defensive game. Weather played a crucial point. But they went 4 for 17 on third down and 0 for 1 on fourth down. They had 70 total plays and 0 touchdowns and 13 penalties for 90 yards. Post-game, Aaron Rodgers and Robert Saleh, they have their butting of heads. We see it. And Aaron Rodgers was alluding to, Robert Saleh was talking about changing a little bit of the pre-snap calls because they had a couple false starts and some pre-snap penalties. And he said that was unacceptable. Aaron Rodgers is saying, well, I think you need to hold everyone else accountable basically for it, is what he said. And so it just goes to show you just a little bit of butting heads. But for the Jets, you would expect a game of that magnitude that you would want them to be able to pull out that game, because Aaron Rodgers is a player and is the quarterback that he is that can game manage that type of game and ultimately get you a victory. So that was a tough loss for the Jets coming off of their New England high from last week in Thursday Night Football. So just wanted to get that out. And also to close out, just want to speak a little bit more on the Philadelphia Eagles, right? I have to go back to this really quick and get this off of my chest. For Nick Sirianni, I need to speak on Nick Sirianni a little bit. He says yet again, post-game, Rip, that it is on him that the team came in unprepared. The team came in unprepared. That's what he said. He said the team was unprepared to play. How many times can you not have the team prepared, Rip? How many times as a head coach are you going in a hostile situation? You're coming off of the season that we came off of. We're 3-8 in the last 11 games dating back to last season. How do you not have a team prepared to play in a hostile environment against a team that you know is coming to throw the football? They're coming to put up points and they're coming to score the football. Tom Brady's is announcing the game. It's just like a coming home party up in Tampa Bay. They're throwing everything in there, man. Beers are flying, everything's flying. Football's flying. Mike Evans is flying. You got defenders flying because we're missing tackles. You got the team, like I said, offensively. I don't know what's going on. We have to protect the football, and we're not doing so. So how exactly are you coming into games as a head coach unprepared? I have no idea how you keep your job after continuously saying that and continuously having a team not prepared to play football. But hey, man, that's just me. I mean, Rip, I would at this point, man, I might have to throw you in there to get our guys prepared, because at the same, I don't know what Nick Sirianni is saying or doing to have that team prepared. But hey, man, that's all I got right now, man. I'm excited for week 4 to conclude tonight. Definitely with Seattle and Detroit. I have my eye on that game just so we can see how Seattle stacks up against the Lions, who are looking for a victory in this situation. They're at home and they've got those jerseys and those helmets that they're coming out with tonight. So definitely excited to see those guys kick off, and also excited to see you guys, man. Hopefully you guys could get a win at home against Tennessee. So we'll see how week 4 concludes, man. But that's all I got, man. I just had to get that off my chest. Nick Sirianni, I have no clue what you're doing.
Now, I'm just thinking about me as the coach in Philadelphia, and can I match up to Nick Sirianni? Well, my first move would be to bring Big Dom into more of the meetings. I made a joke this preseason that maybe Big Dom could take over, and it looks like maybe he will take over. We'll have to monitor this situation, but look, I don't wish ill on any team's fans, maybe the Jets fans a little bit as a Dolphins fan, but I shouldn't be talking right now. So I understand you getting it off your chest with the Eagles, this Northeast connection and stuff. Look, TB, it is always a pleasure to have you on and talking the week that was and the football that we see every morning after Monday. We're back next week. You're back next week. TB, you tell the people where they can find you, not just here on X, YouTube, anywhere, so that people can make sure they follow more and more of what you've got.
Yes, sir, Rip. And as always, appreciate you for the platform, man. Thank you. Thank you so much. I look forward to this every Monday. You guys can follow me on Twitter or X, as they call it, Terrell Bush 05 on Twitter. You'll also probably run into my work page, Terrell Bush NFL. If you follow me on both, I'll follow you back on both. Love to interact with you guys. And on Instagram at BTB Sports 2_. So follow me. I put out content every day from this show specifically, and also my own sports column. So can't wait to continue giving you guys some more content. Week 40 NFL concludes tonight. I'm excited to get to it. Rip, thank you for the platform, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, my pleasure. That's Terrell Bush, and it's such a pleasure to have you, my man. And just a note, this was the first week where you could see the program live on Terrell's own Instagram page, which is pretty cool to be able to outsource and showcase the program to other areas, new eyes, new followers. Such a pleasure. We got 235 plus of you in here listening, watching, commenting, enjoying what you hear. We get a lot from our guy Terrell Bush every week around the NFL. And again, this is the morning after TMA football. If you have a question, drop it in the comments. We'll get you answered. We love to talk not just about the real stuff that we see on the field, but how does that relate to our fantasy teams? How does that connect to what we're doing fantasy-wise? And I love getting into the fantasy element, and that's why we're about to open up the fantasy segment. And this week, bringing on a new guest. Super excited to have my man Dave Hartman in the house. Pigskin Papers. I read this stuff routinely because of the breakdowns. Let's welcome him to the program. Hey, Dave, what's going on?
Hey, Rip. Thanks for having me on today. I really enjoyed. I was backstage for TB's segment. Great stuff. I heard there. But I'm happy to be here this morning. It's a big day. Big double. Day. I'm trying to focus on football, but I can't remember, and I don't want to talk about baseball for too long, but I can't remember a scenario like this where you've basically got 3 teams tied for 2 spots, and you got 2 of them playing an extra day doubleheader, knowing they got to fly to the West Coast probably after. So a lot going on in the sports world right now. So you don't think that the regular season of baseball ends, and yet you still have an extra day on a Monday. And ironically, you have 2 baseball games on Monday. You have 2 football games on Monday because we have a doubleheader Monday Night Football. We have a doubleheader
in New York between the Braves and the Mets. And as you showed your shirt, obviously a big fan. I wish you much luck and success on an outcome that fits you well. Let's dive into fantasy first, Dave. Why don't you tell people? Obviously, you're a fantasy writer for Big Blue View, SB Nation, but let's just let people that are here know where they can find you and what you got going on, and then we'll dive into a lot of the questions. We got a number of questions I want to ask you, and I want to hear from you. Fantasy takes.
Absolutely. On X, I'm at Pigskin Papers, both P's capitalized. My content, and I'm on Instagram too, but usually I'm more on X, dropping my content there. And my weekly content appears mostly on Big Blue View, which was the Giants SB Nation site, but I'm mostly writing fantasy there, not Giants specific content. I've got a waiver wire column every Monday, so that'll be up in a few hours. I still have to finish it. And then every Thursday, I've got like a weekly fantasy preview, which is basically mostly a start-sit column. And then on Friday, I've got Giants FanDuel bets of the week. So I pick 3, props or sides or whatever. I actually went 3-0 this week, but it was one of those like I had the third one was the Daniel Jones interception, which he threw pretty much on the last play of the game in desperation. But that's my content. And then periodically, roughly about once every 2 weeks, I've got a fantasy column of whatever it can be on the SB Nation main site as well. But the main place to find my content is on X.
All right, awesome. Well, we're going to find your content all over those places, but for the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to find it right here. I want to get to some questions that we've got from the guests, and they've just dropped them in. So let's just get your take on them. Let's start with a question we take from Shadow Chasers. He asks, is the Chase Brown, is it noise or is it the real deal?
I've wondered, a lot of people in the preseason were very high on Chase Brown, kind of thinking he'd maybe be the lead back. Zach Moss has never really stayed as the lead back anywhere. He had that run last year when Jonathan Taylor was hurt the first time, where he looked like a world beater. And then when Taylor got hurt the second time, Moss kind of faltered. I would say Brown is a good guy to have on your bench. I know he got a goal line carry yesterday. I still think Moss is the more likely one to lead this backfield. And one thing about the Bengals, there's value to their run game, but they have one of the lowest run rates in the NFL. I think they're something like 31st or 32nd in run rate. So whoever is getting the carries there isn't getting a ton of carries, but they use their backs a lot in the passing game. I liked Brown coming into the season. A lot of people did. I still think he's kind of at best a flex for now, but I'd like to have him on my roster because I think, it's a long season and he could certainly continue to get more touches as he goes.
Hey, he had a good week 4. Thanks for the question, Shadow Chaser. Something that, Dave mentions, you'd like to have him at least on your roster because the potential as the season moves along, he could develop into more, and we'll monitor the situation. Moss was good too for Cincinnati. Let's go to a question that multiple people have wondered around, and this is Kansas City because we have a lot of questions in Kansas City with the big loss to Rashee Rice, which is unfortunate. And the Mafia Members podcast asked about Worthy stock. So how much does Worthy stock rise with the Rashee injury? And take this however you want when you think about Kansas City and the pass catchers.
Yeah, so I in my main league, I drafted Worthy, and of course he was on my bench yesterday because he, weeks 1, 2, and 3, he only had 2 catches each game. He had like 1 carry each game, and the offense was running through Rice. Even with Hollywood Brown, when Hollywood Brown got hurt, I was sort of thinking, okay, Rice is going to get, Worthy's going to get like 80% snap share and maybe, a 15 to 20% target share. And it just wasn't happening. He did have 3 catches yesterday. Mahomes has to throw the ball somewhere. The biggest beneficiary yesterday was Travis Kelce, who had his kind of first good game of the season and is the guy Mahomes trusts. Look, I think Worthy, you want him on your roster right now. Of the top 3 wide receivers they started the season with, he's the only one who's healthy. I still don't know that he's like a 7 or 8 target per game guy. He's small, he's fast. I think there will be deep shots. And, if you started him yesterday with Rice healthy, you were just sort of hoping for one big play, which is what he got. He got it after, I think he got it after Rice got hurt. It was after Rice got hurt. So I think my short answer is his stock rises, but he's not Rashee Rice, and he's not going to be used the way the team used Rashee Rice. I think he's still a bit of a boomer bust player, but his floor is probably a little better than it was. Like his 2-catch floor is now probably like a 3 or 4-catch floor. And he's the kind of player you only need one big play per week for him to justify being in your lineup. And I think he'll get those, probably half the time. I don't know how the Chiefs are 4-0, by the way. They could be 0-4. I mean, it's crazy. This goes back years, ever since it's been Mahomes and Reed, they win games that you look at the game or you look at the stats after and you're like, how'd they win? But
I mean, they did. So, you could say, how did they win the Super Bowl last year, right? Because at times you thought there was no chance they were the Super Bowl champions earlier in the season. As the season went along, towards the end of the season, the playoffs, I looked at the stat. Chiefs are -4 in turnover differential, which is in the bottom 3 of the league. And usually that equates to losing, not winning. Yeah. And so, they're 4-0. At the end of the day, you want to get those W's, but you do think that with the injuries and sort of the not normalcy from that Kansas City offense, it will catch up to them. It hasn't yet. I actually opened the program talking about maybe receivers they could go after that we could see them pick up over the next few weeks through trades and whatnot. So I think they'll do something there. We'll monitor it, but I take your point on Xavier Worthy, and I think they'll try to get him involved through the run game too, those reverses and anything to get the ball in his hands because he's a speedster. We'll get another couple questions. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, another guy I would think about there is Juju Smith-Schuster, at least as a kind of like a wide receiver 4 or 5 on your bench, because he's been there before. Mahomes knows him, and he has at different times in his career been a decent short and intermediate level of the field kind of receiver. And they just don't, they don't have a lot of bodies right now. So he's someone I would think about, if you just need some depth through the bye weeks or whatever at receiver. I don't think you're going to get huge weeks out of him, but I think he'll get some volume too.
Yeah, that's a good name, actually, Juju. I didn't actually think about that. We haven't touched on that. So that's a nice name if you're thinking about someone else on that offense. Let's go to Jacksonville, where there's a number of questions in the chat and across the league, I think, on what's the deal at running back. What to do with Travis Etienne. You either drafted him first, second round, you're relying on him, and then all of a sudden you're seeing Tank Bigsby here or there. You don't know what to believe, what to trust. So where are you on the Travis Etienne circumstance? I mean, is he starter worthy? Do you have to worry completely? And we've even got a question to show you, should we drop him for Kareem Hunt? So the question really is, what is your take on Travis Etienne?
Well, I wouldn't drop him unless he's the worst player on your roster. And I wouldn't drop him for Hunt either, because, that may be, Pacheco could be back week 8, week 9. We're not really sure. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is eligible to rejoin the team. I don't know how much run he'll get. I don't think we'll see much of Carson Steele for a little while. I know this was a question about the Jaguars, but just because Hunt was mentioned, because Steele has fumbled in back-to-back games. I mean, the Jaguars in general, Etienne's not the biggest problem there, but the Jaguars in general have been a pretty big disappointment across the board, both as a team and for fantasy. And I mean, yesterday was just weird. I mean, I don't think Etienne got a carry in the first quarter. Bigsby outgained him, which I think is the second time this year that's happened. And last year, Bigsby was so bad in the backup role that Etienne had one of the highest touch percentages of any running back in the NFL. Like, I think only maybe Kieran Williams was ahead of him, maybe one or two others. That's not the way it's playing out this year. I guess, 4 weeks is a decent sample size. I would probably give it another week or two before panicking and benching him. I mean, obviously, with all these kind of questions, it depends who your other options are. And as you go through the bye weeks, you may have no choice but starting him. But if there's someone kind of decent that you could start over him for at least the next week or two, I think you can think about it. I forget who they play this week. it's the Colts, I think. So that's a pretty decent option, a decent defense to go against. I mean, I think they're one of the bottom-ranked run defenses in the league. I know they gave up those huge games to Mixon and Josh Jacobs the first 2 weeks of the season. So I would probably roll with him this week on the theory that, he is the number one running back there. It could be a good get-right game for that offense, but I'd be patient. It may take a couple weeks to see if he's really, like, if there's a real problem there.
Okay, let's take one more question, and then let's try to move fast so we can get through a number of players here. If you had, so we have a question here from the audience. If you had both CJ Stroud and Baker Mayfield, who would you start going forward?
For me, that would be pretty much matchup dependent. I think they're kind of both in the same range. Quarterbacks are hard to trade unless you're in a super flex league because, in a 12-team league, you got like 20 good quarterbacks. So I would be pretty matchup dependent on that one. If you started Stroud in Chicago, a lot of quarterbacks have struggled. Or no, it was Minnesota. Sorry, at Minnesota 2 weeks ago. You got a bad matchup, but I would make that matchup dependent.
Okay. Appreciate the question, Brian. And for the number of questions in the chat, we'll see if we can get to more through the program. Now, let me give you a chance, Dave. I want to just name a couple players and get your thoughts quickly. Jayden Daniels.
Okay, so I was extremely high on Daniels in the preseason, and I was telling people he was going to be a top 10 QB and to draft him. His ADP was behind Caleb Williams, and I couldn't understand that. I mean, dual threat quarterbacks, you saw it with Anthony Richardson last year before he got hurt, and it was a really small sample size. Quarterbacks who could potentially run for 800 to 1,000 yards have just such a huge advantage in fantasy. And Commanders have a terrible defense, and he's going to have to put up points, which he's doing. And I wish I had taken more of my own advice because, he's clearly a QB1 the rest of the way, I think. I think he's shown enough. His completion percentage is way higher than I thought it would be. He's running, as much as you'd want. And the defense is bad, and they're going to need to keep scoring on every drive or close to it. So if you have Daniels, just hope he doesn't get hurt because he does expose his body a decent amount. And he's not that big a frame, but I had misses this offseason. That was a hit. And I'd be excited if I had him on my roster.
Hard not to be excited about what we've seen from Jayden so far. Let's keep it with the quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes.
I thought Mahomes would be kind of return a little bit to elite form. Last year he ended the season as something like the QB 10 or whatever. And I think right now he's the QB 13, and he's lost two of his 3 starting receivers, his starting running back. He's manufacturing wins. I think he has more turnovers than touchdowns so far this year or something close to that. I have confidence in him winning games. He's the best quarterback in the NFL. For fantasy right now, he's barely a top 10 quarterback. I think if you have him, you probably don't have a better option, and you just keep rolling with him and hope that, the team gets into more high-scoring games. The other thing with him is they have a really good defense. And they've shown, you saw it like in the AFC title game against the Ravens last year. You saw it this week with the Chargers. They're content to win 17-10 games, or whatever those low scores are. They don't have to win the way they won early in Mahomes' career with him throwing 3 or 4 touchdown passes a game. So I think temper expectations. I don't think he's going to end the season as a top 5 QB, which is where he was drafted.
Yeah, tough for the Mahomes owners or the Chiefs in general, but we'll see. We'll have to see what they do. And so far, it hasn't been good. I mean, he should almost give you points or, I don't know, take away points for he took out his number 1 wide receiver as well. So
I've never seen that before.
Yeah, it's not something you normally see. Mahomes does things that nobody has ever seen across the board, clearly.
Yeah, that was one.
That is one for sure. Let's talk one more quarterback because I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention him. Sam Darnold. I mean, he's leading the league in touchdowns with 11 through 4 weeks. He's got an undefeated Vikings team. He's got all the weapons in the world, and he's going to get his tight end back in the upcoming weeks. And that offense is really something. From a fantasy perspective, how do we look at Sam Darnold, who I think obviously at this point is a guy that you want to be rostering, but is this a must-start player, or where are we with the Sam Darnold thoughts?
Well, I missed on Darnold. I was on him before the season. I thought he would be a good QB2 in a super flex just because of the weapons that they have and O'Connell's system. I mean, he's a great offensive coach. This week, my prediction was that, he would maybe turn into a pumpkin a little bit at Green Bay, and he was anything but. I mean, that game was over in the first half, and Darnold was cooking. And like you said, now he's got Addison back. He's going to get Hawkinson back in a few weeks. Aaron Jones is a big improvement for their ground game over what they had last year, and he's a good pass catcher too. So, this took me a little while, but it's kind of funny. You look at that 2018 quarterback class, and Baker Mayfield was the first pick, first QB off the board. Then the Giants took Saquon Barkley. Then Sam Darnold was the second QB off the board, the third pick. And then Josh Allen went later in the top 10, and Lamar Jackson went with the last pick in the first round. And for a long time, it looked like, two completely blown picks when those two unbelievable quarterbacks were there. And I'd still rather have Lamar or Josh Allen than either of those two guys. But it's pretty amazing that Baker and Darnold have both resurrected their careers on, I think for each of them, it's their third or fourth team, an opportunity to start. And they've both, kind of found the right situation for them. Darnold was really young when he was drafted, so he's still a pretty young player. Really getting
Dave, he's so young. He may be younger than Michael Penix still.
I think they're close. Honestly, I think Darnold might be 26.
I'm joking, but he's young.
Yeah,
so, he's young. He's a young guy.
So the interesting thing is going to be if he continues this, what are the Vikings going to do next year? But that's a next year problem. I mean, they used the 10th pick on JJ McCarthy, and the plan was to sit McCarthy for part of this season. So maybe Darnold is playing better because there's no one breathing over his shoulder and who's kind of the presumptive, we want to get this guy in, by the bye week or whatever. And it's his offense now, and he's doing great. And I think from a fantasy perspective, I think depends who your other options are, but I think he's a weekly start right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. And maybe it is the no one over the shoulder. Maybe it's the time that he spent in San Francisco. He's been around the league now. He's matured a little bit, and he's learned, and he's in a great system. Those are good problems for Minnesota to have to consider what they can do next year. And what we know right now is that they're undefeated. They're 4-0. They lead the NFC. They've got the top quarterback in football as far as touchdown passes are concerned, and they've beaten San Francisco, Houston, and now Green Bay in 3 straight weeks. Those are 3 fantastic wins, which I bet if you looked at the Vikings schedule prior to this season, you would have probably circled them for losses on all of them. So credit to Minnesota and what they're doing, and Kevin O'Connell, because it's and they've got fantasy relevant players, not just with Justin Jefferson being awesome, right? They're going to get back TJ Hawkinson. So it's a fun thing to watch, and you love to see it. We've got a little bit more time. We got one more question I want to take from the comments, and then I have a question or two for you. Should I trade for Davante Adams and place him on the bench till he gets better? He thinks he's going to the Jets, which is something that I thought could be happening, a Davante trade to the Jets. Let me put it this way. I think that Davante Adams is getting traded this season. I originally thought it was the Jets. I could see a few teams at this point that will open it up for Davante. I don't think the Davante Raiders situation is long, but that's my opinion. What's your opinion and your take on Davante's? Do you sit him? What do you do with Davante Adams when he is healthy?
Well, I think when he's healthy, you start him because he showed last year, he was miserable most of last season. Since Derek Carr left there, he hasn't been a particularly happy camper, and the Raiders have not been a winning team. And he's always capable of the big game when he's healthy. So I think when he's active, when he's healthy and active, you play him unless you've, for some reason have better options at flex or your second receiver, which is unlikely. As to whether he gets traded, I think he's a pretty good trade candidate. I don't know. The Jets are certainly in consideration. I guess the Chiefs at this point, could be a team that would think about it.
If it wasn't
within the division?
If it wasn't in the division, it's a perfect fit. But the division thing breaks it big time. We'll monitor that for sure. Sorry, continue.
So what I would say is, I think from a fantasy perspective, it's really just a question of, I wouldn't mind adding Davante Adams. It's really a question of what you'd have to give up for him. And maybe, the Adams manager who has him in your league is frustrated. Adams missed this week's game. And, in a troubling development that we've seen a lot early in the season, it's like guys who pop up on the injury report later in the week after waivers, and it's like this keeps happening. We've had a bunch of these this season. So maybe the Adams manager in your league is frustrated, thinks he's going to miss a couple of weeks. And if you can get him without giving up, too much capital, then I don't think he's a bad player to add, because he's still got talent and he could end up on another team. And even if he doesn't, Minshew can throw. The Raiders have had some high scoring games already. And I think he's a good guy to have on your team. So,
yeah, I like that. Thanks for the question from the audience in the comments, and thank you for that good breakdown, Dave. Okay, there's a couple players, and then I just want to hear one thing from you. We got about 5 minutes, and then we got Tip Major coming on to follow on, which is exciting. Thank you for being here, of course, Dave.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the opportunity.
It is my pleasure. This is a guy who I was very high on as the deep wide receiver sleeper coming into the season. This is a guy I got across the board. I couldn't have been higher. I knew opportunity would strike. It hasn't looked as good as I was hoping, as far as he's getting a lot of opportunity, and he did great this past week. Yet there's still always something where it feels like he's dropping the ball. It's not there. But I have high expectations, and he was wonderful in a breakout week in week 4, and that is Green Bay wide receiver Dontayvion Wicks. What are your thoughts on Dontayvion Wicks, not just from what we saw in week 4, because it was like people are saying the ugliest great performance and so on and so forth, where he does score 2 touchdowns, the only wide receiver for 2 touchdowns in the week. Moving forward, though, in that offense, what do you think about Dontayvion Wicks?
So it's funny, because the whole time you were talking, I was trying to guess which player you were gonna say, and I wasn't sure if it was him, but I thought it might be. Look, Wicks going into the season, I think the thinking was he's really talented, but they have 4 wide receivers and 2 tight ends, and it's just a question of, and they're in a high volume passing offense, right? It's just a question of, will someone get hurt in front of him? And given Christian Watson's injury experience, and Jaden Reed got hurt at the end of last season too, that, eventually he'd get the opportunity. Well, Watson, Love didn't injure him himself, but an interception from Love led to that injury. And we don't know how long Watson's going to be out. But, it could be one of these things where, given the way Wicks played at the end of yesterday's game, and obviously the Packers are not normally going to be in huge catch-up mode where they're throwing on every down. So a lot of factors led to what Wicks did yesterday. Watson getting hurt and the team being down 28-0 before you kind of could blink an eye. But I think going forward, if Watson misses a couple of weeks, I think Wicks is 100% at least a flex. Look, 1 week it could be Reed, 1 week it could be Dubs, but I think with Watson out, he's going to get the run, and I think he's a really good receiver. Longer term, harder to say, because at some point that this wasn't a season-ending injury or anything like that. I don't even think Watson's going to go on IR. So it might be a little frustrating with Wicks, because it might be like having this, this really talented player that just isn't getting enough snaps and targets. But I think for now he's a good add, and he's the number 1 receiver I'm listing in my waivers column this week, because he's only like 18% rostered on Yahoo, which is surprising to me. I play in a lot of deep leagues where guys like him are on someone's bench as a stash. And I think that's what he is for now, is a stash who you can stream the next couple weeks.
Yeah. I love it. You talked about your waiver column. That's going to be coming out. It's one of the best pieces that all week on social, on X, which really helps you break down sort of, you got in-depth details and analysis of the players and guys that you want to at least have in your watch list, guys you want to pick up, people you're thinking about. And you do a wonderful job with it. I love seeing it every week. So appreciate you mentioning it, that he's going to be in it, because that gets me excited. We've got time before we bring in my guy Tip for one thing that you can choose on. There's a lot of players I could drop. There's all sorts of questions I could ask you, but I like to give the guest a chance to just go wherever you want to go. So whether it's a team, a player, an idea, the league, this is a little bit of time for you, Dave, to share with us whatever you'd like.
All right. Well, I was going to talk about how bad the tight ends have been, but I think that's a topic that's been talked about by too many other people. So, they say you can't win your fantasy draft in round one, but you can lose it. And I think there's a lot of people out there who are feeling like maybe they lost their fantasy draft in round one, because if you look at the players that went in round one, obviously there's a situation with McCaffrey. Unfortunately, a lot of people drafted, almost everyone drafted before it was really known that he had a serious problem. But then Breece and Bijan were, kind of like consensus. Well, if you don't take McCaffrey first, maybe we're back to taking running backs, first, second, or third. And those guys have both disappointed so far. It's a long season. Really surprising that Breece Hall is averaging like 3 yards per carry. He's near the bottom of the league. I think Tyler Algier got more carries than Bijan yesterday, or close to it. So those have been frustrating situations. Obviously, you and I are Dolphin fans, so we both know that the reason Tyreek isn't producing isn't because of Tyreek, but it's the reality, at least for now. We'll see how they do with Snoop Huntley tonight. But I'm not, I had Tyreek and Waddle as fades this week. I mean, it's hard to trust that passing offense. Garrett Wilson, he was a late first rounder. AJ Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, just a lot of guys who went in the first round. Puka Nacua snuck into some first rounds, have either gotten hurt or are disappointing. And really, like Justin Jefferson, he was the one. And he was the number one consensus pick a year ago. And this year, people were scared of Sam Darnold, and he kind of, he was going 6th, 7th, 8th. CeeDee Lamb probably, was a very safe first round pick. Maybe Jamar Chase. People were scared about his contract situation. He's kind of rounding into form now. So it's been rough. And what I would say to people who, took that player in the first round, who's giving them very little right now, be patient, resist the temptation to sell low if you can, because I think most of those players, there's still a lot of upside for them, but it's been real. I can't really remember a year where this many of the top, say, 12 to 15 players going in are struggling as much as they are. So,
yep,
that's my quick take for the week.
Well, it's a good take. It's a take worth monitoring, worth paying attention to, and just to bring it into clarity and closure here, Breece Hall, Bijan, these were the two guys that were there consistently after McCaffrey. Like, it was McCaffrey 1. You had your choice between Breece or Bijan. Maybe someone was taking Breece or Bijan over to McCaffrey, but it was really these three guys. And when you look at it, McCaffrey hasn't been able to play it down. Now, maybe if you backed him up with Jordan Mason, you're doing all right and really well. And, Breece, I looked it up, terrible game in week 4, and you wonder, is Braylon Allen going to start to get more action there? But Breece is overall running back 12, through 4 weeks and a half point, and Bijan's 18. So as much as it hasn't looked as exciting as you want, like those top running backs are not 2, 3, 1, they are still at least in your lineup. They're still performing decently, I guess. It didn't look good this week for sure, but it's something to definitely pay attention to. You know what I'm going to pay attention to? Your content across the social landscape, on X, your waiver wire, all the stuff you put out. I highly recommend it. It's been a pleasure to have you here, and hopefully you'll come back down the road.
Oh, I would love to. This has been a great opportunity for me to talk football. You have a great show. You get great guests. I've followed you for a long time on X, and you have really good content and thoughts that you put out each week. And I know that both of us are Dolphin fans. Both of us are poker players. So at some point, maybe we talked about this once, that we'll figure out a way to have a poker / fantasy football discussion. Have to figure out how to make that work. But another time, but
we absolutely will. Go Dolphins, right? We got to say go Dolphins.
It's a big. I'm not going to get much done today. Met doubleheader, Dolphin game tonight, but it is what
Dave
it is.
is in sports mode. Dave is in sports mode. All right, Dave, appreciate it. We'll catch you down the road. Of course, you can follow everything on X at Pigskin Papers, the capital P's. You can follow him across the other landscape as you talked about. And we will see Dave down the road. Of course, his stuff is great. Brian appreciate all the comments as people have been watching. We have over 300 plus eyes on the show, and I appreciate that, streaming live across the social landscape on X, YouTube, the newly recently created channel, and on IG Live. People on IG probably like, what is going on? Mike's in a hotel room on the East Coast. He's not in the studio. This is the studio today, but the studio keeps it moving, and we keep it moving here on TMA Football, hashtag TMA Football. This is week 4, the morning after, and we can't have a morning after this week without talking to my guy, the guy that I do the most with, the guy that I love hearing from, fantasy's top analyst, I'm going to say right now. We bring him in this morning. It's my guy, Tip Major.
What is up, Ripper? Ripper, man, the Rip and Tip show. We are here live. 300 plus people. We are here. This is not Tip. Right. That's Rip. We're here.
That's right. That's right. No, it's great to do this on video. Obviously, we've done some stuff, a while ago, video-wise, but not enough for the people and the masses. Obviously, you can catch us both on the Tip and Rip Hour every Thursday night following Thursday Night Football. Really good opportunity to talk about the game and prepare your lineups for the week that is coming up. But let's talk about what we've seen from a holistic view, from any view. Where do you want to start when we think about what we saw in week 4?
I heard you guys talking earlier about the Indianapolis Colts, and this is a situation. When I first saw the injury to Anthony Richardson, I was like, okay, that didn't look good. But he went off to the sideline and he came back in, and then when he made that awkward slide, Rip, I was like, no, something's wrong. Something's not right. And then there's the grizzled vet Joe Flacco just warming his arm up, getting ready to throw for 168 yards and 2 TDs against a Steelers team who he's had success against. I mean, he has an 85% QB rating against them over the course of his career, over 5,000 yards against that team. So he's had some good games against them. So, but I will say this though, and I know that they said that the injury to Anthony Richardson, well, at first yesterday, they said that it was something that he could come back from rather quickly. Well, now, because they got 3 games against the Jags, the Titans, and the Dolphins, 3 winnable games, they're saying, well, we're going to evaluate it later this week. So my thoughts are we going to actually see Anthony Richardson sit down for a little bit and just see Joe Flacco win these next 3 games? What's going to happen at Colts? The Jonathan Taylor situation, that also is something that's pretty bad. They said it's a mild high ankle sprain. In one of my waivers, I actually put out there Trey Sermon as a guy that you should go and get, because if Joe Flacco is running the offense, this offense is going to move. And you got Trey Sermon there. He could be an option for you. Even Evan Hull, he hasn't played at all this year, but he might be somebody you want to look at too, because I'm expecting, if it's a mild high ankle sprain, or high ankle sprains will be 4 to 6 weeks. If it's mild, maybe 2 to 4 weeks for Jonathan Taylor. So that's something I'm looking at too. And then, another thing, Rip, and I appreciate you guys talking about the Raiders, although you guys, look, you guys you're gonna dog my guys. I get it. I love it. I'm gonna give them a sitting down golf clap for that game last night. That was, we should have won that game. We're going to get some beat up, just ragtag bunch of groups in the Browns. We should have won that game. And we should have won it a little bit more handily. But look, it's the Raiders. They're going to play to their competition. That's what they do. So I'm going to give them a sitting down golf clap.
All right. I'll take your sitting down golf club. I'm going to sit down. I'm not going to golf clap. I don't have anything against the Raiders, to be fair. Raiders have a big one next week, though. Denver, Las Vegas, 2-2. It's a big one in the division, where we've got 3 2-2 teams and a Chiefs team that's 4-0, but also under some fire here with the injuries and the concerns. Let's talk about it. Rashee Rice, done for the season. What do we think in Kansas City?
Well, first of all, what I'm thinking is, why Patrick Mahomes? Why did you do that? That right there, that play in and of itself, when you're a franchise quarterback of a team and that is your number 1 wide receiver, you do not go back first into the ground, and there's a bunch of knees and legs and ankles all over there. And like, why would you do something like that? That was a situation where it was on the sideline. Let my players take care of it, and we'll go back and try to get another series next time. Like, that was so unnecessary.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he's just trying to make it even more difficult on himself to prove how elite he is. But yeah, you hate to see it. I mean, you hate to see him take out his own player, especially when Rashee Rice was coming on as an elite wide receiver in real football and in fantasy.
Dude, he was on pace for 1,300 plus yards. Like, he was.
He was.
Yeah.
He was.
Oh God.
Let's move. We got a comment here. Tip Bijan Major. I don't know what he means, but I know you like Bijan. What was your take on, we've talked about this, but people watching this show, they may not be tapped into other parts. So let's just where's your feeling on Bijan? What did we see? The Atlanta offense in general, not just Bijan, whether it's Drake London, whether it's Kyle Pitts, no targets, Kirk Cousins, no touchdown passes. What are we to make of Atlanta, not just Bijan, but the entire Atlanta situation?
I was very curious to see what Zach Robinson would do with this team. I kind of studied a little bit of what his play calling was, and it was, supposedly creating space for his players to make plays. I looked at a bunch of Atlanta analysts, the people that are, reporters and sports commentators for that team. They kind of broke down what Zach Robinson was going to do, and he hasn't done any of that. And it's very bad. His play calling has been terrible. I am sorry. He is not utilizing any of the weapons that he has properly. And Bijan Robinson, that is your best weapon. That is your player. And he's not utilizing him properly. You go back to the game last week on Thursday night where he has a fourth down and he runs a little slant, a side route, side option, and there's nobody blocking Nick Bolton. Nick Bolton shoots the guy. It's like, come on. Like, these plays that's when you use Tyler Algier. I thought Tyler Algier looked good yesterday. I thought he ran really well. Bijan Robinson could not get into a rhythm. He had a touchdown, which was called back on a holding penalty. That's one of the rhythm things that could have happened. It was a nice touchdown. It was like 25 yards too. But it's just, this team's not in rhythm. The coaching is not. The play calling has been bad. Like, very booty cheeks. It's been that bad. So it's one of those situations where hopefully they get it together in the next couple of weeks. But I'm still riding with Bijan. You're not getting me off that hill. Nobody's getting me off that hill. I still like Bijan Robinson.
Tip is like the conductor he's like the conductor on the Titanic. He's the last one down. It doesn't matter if the ship is going down. He's riding with it. And hey, it's just respect. I mean, I love it. What else are you going to do? Now, but look, when I talk about the Falcons or we talk about Bijan, I think Bijan's got all the talent in the world. Obviously, I've come to the conclusion. I think, at least for now, to me, he's a lot more Reggie Bush 2.0. I've been saying that a lot, which is an electric player. Reggie Bush was an electric football player. When he had the ball in his hands, something exciting was happening, especially in space. It's just the volume just doesn't seem to be there. Maybe it will get there because obviously Bijan is super young. I just am the type of person who I don't like to anoint anybody at the level of like the top until they've been the top. So we just haven't seen it with Bijan. I thought we were going to see it against New Orleans. I really did. So that was a little bit disappointing, but it is fun to watch. It's more than Bijan, though. It's that Atlanta offense across the board, as I mentioned. Drake London, Kyle Pitts. I mean, they're struggling still. And Kirk, and maybe it's going to take time. And look, we're only one quarter down. When you watch games, the first quarter is not the same as the fourth quarter, and the ending result is not necessarily what happened in the first quarter. So just because first quarter Bijan or first quarter, players are not performing does not mean they're not going to be there at the end, and vice versa. So I don't want to dive too deep on it, but I love that you are riding no matter what with your guy Bijan. Okay, we're going to move off of that for a little. We got a little bit of time left here. Let's talk about the rest of the league and fantasy. What was your biggest fantasy takeaway from the week that was in week 4?
Yeah, I mean, there was a bunch of them, but Lamar Jackson in this offense in Baltimore, this is what we thought we were going to see coming into the first 2 weeks of the season. But these last 2 weeks, we have seen what we thought we were going to see in the first 2. But it's they are getting it. It's clicking on all cylinders. I'm not surprised because that offensive line was in such bad shape week 1 and 2. I know they were going against Kansas City. They have a good defensive coordinator and a strong front. But now we get to see they're beating up on some people. And they beat up on the Bills last night, and then they beat up on the Dallas Cowboys the week before. And Derrick Henry, man, he's lost his step, okay, but not that much. He is still blazing fast when he sees nothing but green in front of him. And it's crazy, man. I think this offense is only beginning. Todd Monken called a beautiful game yesterday. He still didn't get the tight ends the ball. We want to see Mark Andrews get involved. You remember how I put a tweet out there that we want to sell Travis Kelce? Well, I'm holding on Travis Kelce now because of the Rashee Rice situation, but I might be selling Mark Andrews because right now he's just not in the game plan. It's the Lamar Jackson. It's the Derrick Henry show right now.
Yeah, who's buying Mark Andrews right now?
Nobody's gonna buy him, but you can. I mean, you got some people who still the name says it all. You got some people who still believe. You might have to package him, but somebody out there will get him. Oh yeah.
Yeah, you package him with
especially
someone
with the state of tight ends right now. I mean, we're talking about people like Brenton Strange. We're talking about people like Zach Ertz coming back. Like it's one of those situations. Somebody gets a big name like that, they will be like, we'll maybe have a better second half. Which you got to look out for. I like to talk about the second half players, but that's down the road.
Yeah, we'll get to second half players in the second half of the season. A quick minute. We're going to go for a few more minutes here with my guy, Tip Major. Again, if you're just following, make sure you follow Tip Major on X, cross socials. I know he's starting a YouTube channel soon, but you can hear us together on Thursday nights after TNF football on X. One of the favorite times of the week where we recap the Thursday night game and talk about the week that is coming up, which will be week 5 next week. We do have 2 Monday night games tonight, Detroit, Seattle. Detroit unveiling their new uniforms with the chrome bloom helmets. Those look crazy. They're going to play really good in those. Seattle tries to remain undefeated and move to 4-0, which is a surprise. Tonight's a big one for those 2 teams. And then, of course, they have the other matchup with the Dolphins and the Titans. Not so exciting. We'll move away from that. Okay, we talked about some of the other things. Anything else on your mind as we move forward that you want to share with the viewers?
Yeah, another thing, I put out a waiver post yesterday. I really would recommend, especially if you're a Tua owner, Anthony Richardson owner, obviously go with Joe Flacco first. Pick him up, but I would start looking at Jameis Winston. This situation in Cleveland is bad. It just does not look. You saw yesterday on the sideline, Deshaun Watson go to one of the offensive linemen and talk him up, kind of like help him. But before that, they were going head to head. They were going at each other. And then I just think Deshaun Watson's lost right now. They're not doing well. They're in a division that Cincinnati just won a game last week. It's one of those situations where I would at least just take a look. If you got a second kicker, if you got a second tight end, if you got an open spot, just put Jameis Winston on your scheme because he's not the best reality quarterback, but when it comes to fantasy, he's going to get some yards and he's going to throw the ball. That's what Jameis does.
And the reality is we're talking fantasy right now, so I like that. I had a question lined up. I was going to talk to you about the Cleveland situation, but I think stashing Jameis or getting ready for Jameis's potential, takeover or insertion to the quarterback position in Cleveland could be a game changer for not just Jameis, but those weapons in Cleveland from Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy. I mean, David Njoku is supposed to come back soon, so something to pay attention to.
I bet, Jameis was a funny guy. Like, you all seen his pregame rituals and stuff like that. But I bet he's over there on the sideline talking to the coach. Coach, I'm ready whenever you need me to go in. I'm ready.
Oh, yeah.
I guarantee you he's doing that.
And, I noted that Deshaun Watson had a little blow up this weekend with his offensive line and stuff. So there's it's starting to, the friction, it's boiling. The water is hot. The pot is overflowing. We're getting close to where we can see it actually happen. Even though of Deshaun's games this season, I thought yesterday was probably better than some of the previous, games this season. It's not saying much. He set the bar low. All right, that's Deshaun Watson. I wanted to talk on the last player and get your thoughts because I haven't had a chance to talk to you yet. Obviously, I talked to Gabe about this. I put out a comment. Did Tavian Wicks. That was my guy. deep into drafts coming into the season. I thought opportunity would present itself. I like his talent. He goes out. He's the only wide receiver with 2 touchdowns in week 4. 13 targets is what excited me. That just means he's going to get an opportunity. That's the key. It's targets, that consistency. And Jordan Love is back. I think the Dontavian Wicks thing is back on now, and we saw it. What do you think about Dontavian Wicks going forward?
I do think it was a product of them being down early, and them having to come back into the game and getting it. That's why you saw a lot of targets his way. He's got to clean up the catches, though. He's got to, try to, meet those a little bit more in the middle. I was like, 13 targets is a lot, and I don't expect you to catch all of them, but you can at least catch 8. And we got to go back and look at some of the tape to see how catchable those balls were too. But I'm pretty sure Jordan Love at least had maybe 1 or 2 that was catchable that he could have got. So for me, it's a go. I mean, he's right now. I was looking at Sleeper and Yahoo, ESPN. They're all different, but Sleeper, he's 83% roster. So in Sleeper, you got a lot of expert leagues, things like that. So it's going to be a little bit more of a roster. I have him in the Pros versus Joes, and me and Jerry Bradshaw, we are keeping a hold of this guy because once he comes back, Jordan Love, it might be good for him. We got to understand the Green Bay Packers situation with their wide receivers are so thick, so deep. It's going to be a situational game. But now you got Christian Watson getting the high ankle sprain, so now there might be another opportunity for him.
Well, I hope the opportunity continues, and I do hope that he meets Jordan Love's passes more halfway because when you watch it, there's a lot that is out there that could be taken. And Jordan Love did say that there was a lot that he could do to help out Dontavian, but I think the talent is there. I'm excited. I think he's going to be a big waiver wire ad, as you said. I know you are going to be a big ad to people's follow soon. What do you have to add?
Well, first of all, Rip, I'm a little disappointed in you. I did this just for you, bro.
Oh, yeah. You know why are you disappointed? I'm not. I mean, that's amazing.
You didn't say anything, man. I wanted you to be like, Hall & Oates. I went down and looked at my record. I was like, because man, you be playing the jams on Hall & Oates, bro, and I'll be like, I see all your Instagram. I like, man, that dude, and it's just perfect. Like the pictures, the videos, it's perfect when you have the Hall & Oates going with it, man. I love.
Yeah, I usually. Yeah, no. I mean, if you don't love Hall & Oates, I don't love you. The key is you got to match the Hall & Oates song with the theme. So that's what I try to do. But come on, it's always Hall & Oates, man. I can never have too much Hall & Oates. I love the backing. What a great way to wrap up the morning after football, which here on the East Coast now, we're into the afternoon already. It's all weird for me. I'm used to being up earlier on the West Coast, but I'm on the East Coast. We did this from the hotel room. Wasn't planning. We'll be back in week 5. But more importantly, I'm back with Tip Major on Thursday after Thursday Night Football on X. You can listen to us there. Tip, tell everyone where they can find more about you. I know you have so many things going on.
Yeah, obviously the Rip and Tip space, guys, please tune in. It's a blast. We always have a good time with everybody. Then you also have me on the Sports Affiliation with Greg Kellogg on Thursday before the game. We do our sit starts, our sleepers to start. We do mailbag questions. We always have a pro and a Joe on there. Ripper's coming on there pretty soon too. And then then you also have 32-Bit. I do a podcast with them on Tuesdays. So I do a podcast with them on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m., but it doesn't usually come out till Wednesday or Thursday. But yeah, I'm working with them, doing articles for Sports Affiliation too. My tweets, everything, man.
It's right there. It's under his name, Tip Major. All right, Tip. Well, it's great to see you, my man. Have a great rest of your day and week. I will see you and talk to you soon. I'm sure new people following, they'll be able to tap into your stuff. Look forward to seeing more of you. Have a great rest of your day, bud.
Appreciate you, Rip. Thanks, man.
All right, that was Tip Major. I'm so glad I was able to get Tip on. I've been wanting to get Tip on to the conversation here, and we'll get him more for longer segments as we move forward. It was a pleasure today, the morning after football, TMA football week 4, even though the lighting is bad, even though the hotel room is not perfect, even though I'm looking shiny, it doesn't matter. We're here talking football the morning after, helping you win your gambling bets, helping you get more information. Make sure you're following the guests who are here. Thank you so much to my guy, Dave Hartman. Thank you to my guy, Terrell Bush. Of course, Tip Major. They were huge parts of this morning's program. TMA football is back for week 5. Be back on the West Coast there. We'll get better lighting, better studio. We'll be back for that. That'll be fun. But before that, make sure you tune in to the rest of the week. I've got the box score breakdown. It's out now on X. It gives you all those little details that you didn't maybe see during the games or you're not paying attention to. Prior to that, my guys, if you want to partner with the show, you want to be on the show, you want to contribute to the show, send me a message. We're growing 375 plus eyes on this show, streaming cross-platform, YouTube, X, and Instagram, looking to add LinkedIn, Facebook, everywhere there are eyes, we want to be. That's it. From a week 4, that was exciting. We got 2 Monday night games tonight, Miami, Tennessee, Detroit, Seattle. Hope you enjoy them, and I hope you enjoyed the show. We will see you next time for TMA Football, week 5. Have a good one, everybody.